All right, good people. No need for introductions. For those of you that's been rolling with me for a while, you know who this gentleman is. He is Zach Bradford, the CEO of Clean Spark. We are just going to dig down and get right into it. Zach, could you go ahead and greet the people, please?
Hey, thanks again for having me. I always love being on the show. So appreciate everybody that tunes in to, learn more about the market and what's going on.
Hey Zach, the Bitcoin conference. We didn't get a chance. I know your assistant and my assistants was trying to get us together, and we just couldn't get together. You had an important meeting. I just got to ask you, and I know you probably can't talk. Were you able to actually talk to the incoming president as he came to the Bitcoin conference?
Yeah, actually, where I was when I missed the meeting is we were actually having a sit down. So there was a group of us that did sit down with the now president-elect to talk about Bitcoin, Bitcoin mining, and all things crypto.
You know, I told my wife. She says, "Well, they can't. They won't be able to make the meeting." And you know what I said? I said, "I feel like the ugly girl that got dumped before the for the prom." I said, "He's leaving me for the president elect." And she's like, "No, I think he's got another meeting." I says, "I'm telling you, they're all in that room." Man, that was an exciting convention, don't you think?
No, it was great. The energy that was there, it kind of proves that we're on this precipice. The tipping point is here, and I'm incredibly excited about what Bitcoin has to offer for the future, but really excited about how we're going to have a government that is going to be welcoming to it. We've spent the last couple of years in an uphill battle, and if there's one thing good about the next 4 years, I think it's going to be that.
All right. For those of you that don't know, this is Zach Bradford. He's a fan favorite here at Stock Up. Listen, he is the CEO of CleanSpark, which is one of the top five Bitcoin mining companies in the world. Right. Well, I know here in the country, and
Mhm.
they are embarking upon a new journey. And I am one. We are privileged to be one of the media sources that is privy to hearing this first. Okay, so Mr. Zach Bradford, why don't you tell people what you're going to be doing with convertible bonds?
Absolutely. So as you mentioned, we are the second largest Bitcoin miner of all the publicly traded, and we have the most hash rate on domestic US soil. So we've built our operations here in the US. We think it's the best place to be growing. And what we just did is we just raised $650 million with a convertible bond that has 0% interest, I should add. So we're viewing this as being a best in class instrument that we just put together. Now, what are we going to do with all that money? So we actually have structured this in a way we were highly conscious and of what the feedback we were getting from investors, and we wanted to establish something that was going to meet both our growth needs, but also answer a question that a lot of investors had, and it was around the growth of companies in our industry. And historically, we have used equity to grow, and it has been the right instrument at the right time to continue to grow. But as we've matured and we now have a balance sheet that's almost 2.5 billion, and a company with no debt, it was time to add a little bit of debt, and that's really what a bond is. It's corporate debt, and so we are going to use that to continue to grow the company. But we also bought shares back and executed what's called a cap call transaction, and what that is that's basically buying an option in our own company. And when you combine those together, what it does is it makes that bond convertible at, over, I think it was, now I'm going to forget the number, but it's, forgive me if I get this slightly wrong, but it's about $24 a share. But ultimately, with that buyback, it means there's no additional dilution to our shareholders till the stock's above $33. So it's
So that
170% up. So we looked at it that way, is we are essentially using this instrument to raise capital that, yes, it's convertible to stock, but it's this equivalent as forward selling our stock significantly higher than it's trading at today, because we're making a bet on ourselves and where we think the company is going to go. And we think sometimes stocks may or may not reflect actual value of the company, and we expect that we have a good journey ahead of us. We want to deliver that value to our shareholders.
And just to be clear, with the cap raised, what is your plans for the cap raised?
So after we do the buybacks and things, we're netting a little over $400 million of continued growth. And so right now we're sitting at 33.7 exahash at the end of November. And that's processing power for your new users. That results in approximately 20 to 22 Bitcoin a day. And we're going to actually have grown right around another 10% by the end of this month to around 37. But we've got our eye on 50, and so which would increase our production another 50%. So we've got eyes on trying to approach 30 plus Bitcoin a month in production, and so that's what we're going to use the majority of this growth capital for. 163 approximately $1 million should get us into that 50 exahash mark. And then the balance is going to be to keep Bitcoin on balance sheet, because obviously we're producing Bitcoin. We have employees, we have power bills to pay. And instead of just buying Bitcoin, which some of our peers are doing, we're mining Bitcoin at about $36,000 a Bitcoin. And we just use the capital on the balance sheet to pay the bills instead of selling Bitcoin, and we keep it. So we look at it as saying, because that was an option. Do we go buy Bitcoin? Why would we when we can mine it at $36,000 a coin? That's meaningfully more accretive to our shareholders than just stacking up Bitcoin that we would pay. Right now, Bitcoin's at $104,000. I'll take $36,000 Bitcoin all day long.
There you go. Sounds like a great plan. For those of you that don't know, Zach, could you take 2 minutes and explain exactly what a convertible note is, especially when you're doing the zero coupons?
Yeah. So that piece of debt is owned by large institutions, and that bond bears interest at 0%. But the rights that the shareholders get is they can convert it into a set number of shares. So underneath this bond, $650 million bond, there's up to around 52 million shares that could be issued, but they won't be issued, and it doesn't have a maturity for 6.5 years. Now, the shareholders have the ability, the holders of those notes, they can convert early in 3.5 years. But what that does is it allows us to use the capital, grow the business, and no new shares are issued for at least 3.5 years. And so that's the big benefit. So what it is, and the 0% interest rate reflects this, is basically the underlying value of the instrument was seen as good enough by some of, again, the biggest institutional investors in the world, as they would take the exposure to the stock on a long-term basis, even if they have to wait 3.5 years, rather than take the interest rates, where it's at zero. So, because again, that would have been the other way to look at it. They could have taken 1 or 2% interest points instead. But I'm biased, but I think it's going to work out both really well for the company and the investors involved.
I do too. And to be honest with you, Zach, there were many months where I wasn't buying the miners, and I wasn't even buying MicroStrategy, just the underlying asset, Bitcoin. And just before we got back in contact with each other, I started to buy the miners again. And I just a couple of weeks ago started buying Clean Spark again. And a lot of my followers were asking why. Now, I did not know about that, that this was happening, but I'm going to be honest with you. I was thinking to myself, I bet you Zach is going to go to the coupons, the convertible notes, and because it's just a business model that works. Now that you bring the underlying fact that you are using that to actually mine more, some of it to actually mine more, that gives us an extra layer of protection as far as where our money is spent as an investor into your company. I really like that. Could you go over that again? Now, some you're buying Bitcoin with, and then some you are actually using for mining. Could you dig into that a little longer?
We're actually going to use all of it for mining, but the way to think about it is we're going to buy assets that are going to then produce more Bitcoin.
Yes.
But the assets we already have that are producing Bitcoin, we have, everybody knows Bitcoin uses a lot of power. That's part of the underlying benefit of the security protocol that keeps it decentralized.
Right.
However that gets used, we obviously pay, utilities, we pay our employees that run the sites, and we have a choice. We can either sell Bitcoin, and we like Bitcoin right now. We believe, and we have a directional view on Bitcoin and where it's going, and we believe it still has, room to grow.
You know I'm
And
going to
so
ask you that, right? You know I'm going to ask you that. But
I'm
go ahead.
sure you will, yeah. So as part of that, and frankly, there will be a time we'll maybe sell some of our Bitcoin or not. But right now, we want to hold it all because we think it's valuable to add to the balance sheet.
Hmm.
And and so in order to add it, we have to have money to pay the bills. So we look at it as if it costs us $36,000 in power to produce that Bitcoin, I'm going to pay the utilities with cash that's going to be on the balance sheet that we just got from this debt. And that's how I'm going to keep it. So I'm not going to go out to the spot market and just buy Bitcoin and pay 100,000. We're
Right.
going to just pay our bills instead of selling Bitcoin, which means right now, we're producing, around 20, 22 Bitcoin a day. We had to keep all the Bitcoin instead of some of the Bitcoin on the balance sheet. And
I'm
so, yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm glad you brought that up. So instead of buying Bitcoin like today at 104, the other day it was 108, you're taking the money and you're mining it at 36. So it's more profitable for you to mine it at 36 rather than buy it at 104.
100%. And yeah, I'm not going to add as many Bitcoin in one single day. But if you look at our peers, what's also going to happen by buying Bitcoin, what they're not doing is they're not growing, and we're going to continue to pull further and further ahead. You go back 4 years, we were one of the smallest miners. And now being the second largest is because we have been executing incredibly well on our growth strategy, and we've been doing it very cost effectively. So when I see one of our peers buy Bitcoin, I see it as a competitive advantage for us as we continue to grow, because scale ultimately makes it even cheaper to mine Bitcoin because we all have overhead. The more Bitcoin I get to spread that overhead across, it means the more profitable we're going to be. So I think scale matters a lot as we continue to grow into the next 4 years.
This is absolutely awesome. I appreciate you, giving us that information. But I got to ask you, Zach, and good people on this show, we always say anything we say is not a suggestion for you to buy or hold or sell. And then I have this word called guesstimation. So we're just taking a guess and an estimation and we're putting it together. So Zach, to be fair to you, because I know you're very conservative, but give us a bear case and a bull case for Bitcoin.
I think that right now how I'm seeing Bitcoin is I do think it'll fall into a range, if everything stayed equal, right around 180,000 is where the market would peak at some point in the next, I'll call it 100 and, really about, 12 to 18 months. And I think it's healthier for Bitcoin to take a slow and steady rise. I think if you think of velocity, could have an effect. High velocity up means a quicker velocity down. It'll compress the way it works. But I think we're going to enter into something that's maybe different with this new administration. And it's not that it's going to be the magic bullet, but what it is for the first time ever, we're going to see kind of a tailwind behind Bitcoin. And as that tailwind quicks in, we don't know what that's going to do. It could make it so that it goes meaningfully higher, or it could mean that historically it's had pullbacks every 2 years where it kind of resets the price. It could be that we don't get that same reset. We've got an administration, we've got ETFs, we've got a lot of tailwinds, and so this 4-year cycle I think is going to be different. So if I was to call bear and bull, I know that was a long-winded answer, but I'd call it maybe 150,000 in a bear case is my guess. But I think with the tailwinds we have, even if my midpoint guess is 180 today, if the next couple months go as well as the headlines make it sound, we could see meaningfully higher than that.
I'm glad you said that because I was at 120 to 30 a few months ago, and right now I'm at 170. So that's my case. All right, that's my guesstimation. So thank you for that. So I want to talk about Bitcoin dominance, and you brought that up. And because of all of the institutional buy-in of Bitcoin, You know how Bitcoin gives up its dominance and then the altcoins start to surge. This time, I think it will be a little different. I know people don't like hearing that. There's things that are already different. The amount of institutional buy-in right now is different, right? And the incoming administration being pro Bitcoin, the SEC leaving, the old one and the new one coming in. What do you think as far as Bitcoin dominance? I personally think that we will experience higher lows with Bitcoin. What do you think?
Yeah, so historically with the Bitcoin, as you said, you kind of it goes on this ebb and flow, and as different assets come in. I think Bitcoin's going to continue its very strong dominance. And I think that there's an underpinning thing that is ultimately different about Bitcoin that I think is really important than all the other altcoins and things going on. And that is there is no CEO of Bitcoin, right? There
Right.
is no entity that can change it. It's truly and fully decentralized. But on top of, there's lots of now altcoins that can say, hey, we're decentralized, but they're not decentralized enough to like lay claim to what Bitcoin has done. And it's reached that escape velocity. I think it will be the internet store of value for, cryptocurrency.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the gold equivalent. We had the Treasury Secretary say that just a few days ago. And so,
Yep.
it's hard to unseat that. And so that's why I think it's going to maintain its dominance. Now, I think there's a lot of interesting use cases. I'm excited, and something else that should make Bitcoin even more valuable is layer one technologies and layer two technologies that build on top of Bitcoin. So they
Yes.
use Bitcoin as their base layer, and then exciting things come from it. Historically, we've seen a lot of that sit on the Ethereum blockchain. And I think that Bitcoin will have this path to continue to grow, and that every use case that gets added to the Bitcoin blockchain has the potential to make it more valuable, especially for miners.
Right.
There's a point in time in the future we will live off of the fees rather than the base block reward.
Mm-hmm.
And for that to continue to happen in the future, it's about these new technologies coming to market. So a lot of exciting things happening. I think the regulatory certainty about how the SEC and the CFTC is going to view new things coming is
Yes.
what's needed for innovation to happen. So I think it's coming.
Can you comment? You brought up Ethereum. Can you comment on two more layer ones like Solana and Sui?
I don't dig into those. I'm so focused on Bitcoin. I know of all these great projects, but I don't know enough about them
Okay.
to really comment strongly on it.
How about ETH? Since you commented on it.
I think I view that as if Bitcoin is the currency that is, I think, the strongest and will continue to be the strongest forever in the space. I see Ethereum as the platform. It's almost like the Windows of uh, digital commerce, right? A lot of programs sit on top of it, and Ethereum has value because of the things built on it. And I think it will continue to do so because of its infrastructure is structured in a way that will allow, rapid change. But the
Right.
rapid change is also the reason that Ethereum, I think, is not ever going to keep up with the value because again, you start to look at, Microsoft has a ton of value, but gold has a different standard of value, right?
Yes.
Though that's the equivalent, I would look at that in the, I'm going to call it the past version of history of the world in the last, Internet 2.0 is gold and Microsoft. I think that that's what you would be comparing it against. So they're going to be so different, but it doesn't mean they're not going to both have immense value.
So Zach, as far as Bitcoin miners, um, what do you see? What's the future hold for that? What are some exciting things that you think are coming? And I know that they have to create after the halving. It's difficult to do what you guys do. And congratulations, by the way, because I remember when Clean Spark was, the little engine that could, and now you guys have surged your way to number two, which is astronomical. So my hat's off to you on that. But as far as like moving into data centers and, because of all of the computing power we're going to need for energy. What is the future of Bitcoin miners?
I think what you're going to see is a divergence in the Bitcoin mining space. There's going to be 3 or 4 companies that are really good at actually mining Bitcoin. And then you're going to see a lot of people that maybe they're not as good at mining Bitcoin, but maybe they have some interesting assets that a data center might want. And that's where you're going to see companies start to split. I do think that there's unfortunately a lot of headline chasing using the words HPC, AI. You'll notice that CleanSpark hasn't announced anything, and we don't have any intentions to announce an HPC or AI
Right.
product because we're making so much money mining Bitcoin. When we make that comparison, the
Mhm.
economics are just better for Bitcoin mining. Now, if that ever changes, we have a lot of data centers, and you have a never say never mindset is how I like to look at it. It's strategy over ideology. We're not so ideological about Bitcoin that we would ignore a good business opportunity that would be strategic. And so I think that there's already miners though that when they make that comparison, they say, you know what, I can make more money doing this than I can doing that. Um, and so I think that's where you're seeing this divergence. I also think that right now we're in this interesting spot where we have such a shortage of compute that people are willing to pay top dollar for HPC compute. I think that that's got a lifespan in it, though. If you look at all the announcements that these massive funds, whether it's BlackRock or anybody else, about the data centers they're rolling out in the next 3 years, I
Hmm.
think that the bottleneck is resolved in 2028. Doesn't mean there's not still massive data center building an opportunity, but
Hmm.
I think that the supply and demand curve will start to meet, and so the premiums won't be there. So that's the other reason that we're going to be slow to invest in the space, is it matters who's on the other side of that contract.
Right.
I'll give a shout out even to Core Scientific. I think they've done
Yes.
a great job on this, but
Yeah.
I think it's the right move for their business. But what they have is they have something that's unique in the space and how it's working, and it's not something that is replicatable because you would need a core weave to come along and be a partner. There's a big difference between a core weave as a partner and a video game developer that no one's ever heard of, and the credit risk and their ability to actually service a contract. So
Yeah.
that's my one thing I would say, and that's how we look at it. And it's important for anybody investing in the space is you have to look at who's on the other side of that HPC contract,
Right.
and that profile of who it is matters as much or more than just going into the industry to try and check it out.
We've also, as you know, had the CEO of Core Scientific on here, and yeah, it's interesting you brought that up. Were you in Abu Dhabi for the
I
Bitcoin conference?
I wasn't a few weeks ago. We were actually here in the U.S. We have a off year end at 9:30, so it makes our year end filing fall at the same time. So I did miss that one.
Okay, let's talk about this. This will probably be my last question. Well, something you can have input in. Personally, I've been telling people, by the way, on this video, we will not be talking about XRP as we close this out. All right. The reason I bring up XRP, because Zach, there's a huge chase and a lot of people entering into this space is just loading up with the hot coin, the flavor of the week. And I'm suggesting that if you're going to be in this space, everyone should be accumulating some Bitcoin under, at 100K or under, right? Even now, just accumulating. Uh, you know, I truly think that in 8 to 10 years, one Bitcoin could be worth $1 million. And then the following year, it can go to 2 million. You got companies like BlackRock suggesting 2% allocation in Bitcoin. These things are going to ramp up quick. Do you agree with my bull case 8 to 10 years from now with Bitcoin? And what do you think is the history of that?
I do. I think that Bitcoin has some tremendous legs on it, and I think that it's about choosing, a best in class vehicle for anyone's capital to invest. Right?
Right.
There's always a place and an allocation for something that's going to be speculative. Right? or maybe
Hmm.
even on a short-term basis. Um, but I think that that depends on where you're at in the cycle of your investing. I know myself, I don't touch anything else in it but Bitcoin, right?
Hmm.
It's what we do as a company. We
Right.
don't have any altcoins. It's not that we don't have opportunities to, again, chase a headline or chase some small opportunity. But if we're thinking long term, which we are for multiple years in the future, we want as much Bitcoin as we can get, and we think it's the right way to build our business.
I have some meme coins which I'm killing it in. I got to be honest, and I got some altcoins to which I'm killing it in, up 200%, and have a sizable amount of money. And I've been honestly saying to my audience that I'm going to roll my meme coins over into altcoins for alt season for safety. And then eventually all of my altcoins are going into Bitcoin. I'm just using the fastest car theory. At the end of the day, when crypto summer is over and the bull run is over and things start to sell off in crypto, the meme coins are going to tank. A lot of people will lose their money when it even comes to altcoins. But I truly believe that Bitcoin, well, it already has proven, is going to have the least fall of them all. Do you have anything you want to add to that?
I think like all these things, it's you measure your risk and always have a plan from an investing. But I'm not here to give advice on any of that investing. But what I will say is we view the cycle as something that is a very real thing to be aware of, and we have our own capital management strategy around our Bitcoin that relates to that. And so we have sold all of our Bitcoin at one point in time in our company's history. You go back 2 years,
Yep.
we felt that the market reached a point of euphoria.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it would have been what, 21, 22 in November. And so Bitcoin is about 66,000 at the time.
Yeah.
And all of our data was pointing to this point of euphoria. And we sold it all. It was actually unpopular at the time as a company to do so.
November
Um,
2020.
yes. And then we dollar cost averaged for all the way until June of 23.
Mm-hmm.
And we sold everything we produced when we produced it. And in June of 23, we felt, hey, it's time again. And that we've built the entirety of our Bitcoin stack since June of 23. We've mined all of it. And we have, at the end of last month, latest public disclosure was right around 9,300 Bitcoin. And so ever since June of 23, it's about 98% of the Bitcoin we've mined have stayed on our balance sheet because we believed that it was time to, hold on for dear life because it was going up. But
Yeah.
we will have a directional view again as we measure plateaus and pullbacks. And, we're not afraid of the short-term pullback.
Right.
What happened between 70 and 55 a few months ago, we didn't sell any more Bitcoin because we continue to have a directional view that it would go back up. So, none of us can have a crystal ball for the future,
Correct.
but we take a very real time every single day. We remeasure.
Ballpark. I'm going to dig down on this question one more time, and I should ask it a different way. Do you think Bitcoin fall in the crypto winter will be less percentage wise than it was the previous crypto winters?
I think it will. So historically, Bitcoin has pulled back as much as 80% every cycle. And so whatever the high was, it was 80% less where it bottomed and then it retraced. I think last time it hit like 79.8. So it was like right on the mark when it retraced back up. I don't think it'll be as big a fall because I think that there's just so many new on ramps to Bitcoin. One for
Mm-hmm.
everyday individuals, and then institutions are just gobbling it up. And when institutions are buying it, a lot of them have mandates to just put it on a shelf and leave it. Michael Saylor with Michael Strategies, I think he owns a single digit percentage of all the Bitcoin that will ever exist now,
Yes.
and he said
I
he's
think it's
never
like
selling.
2%, wasn't it? Over
Yeah,
2%.
yeah.
Yeah.
So to have individuals say I'm never selling because I don't have a short term view. If you take a long term view and you believe in the future, um, I think there's now enough that's hitting shelves that will just never move. that when the pullback happens, it will be less steep.
Yeah. I don't think we'll see, I personally don't think we'll see $50,000 if Bitcoin hits 180, and especially if it hits 200 this summer. I don't see Bitcoin hitting 50K anymore. I'm guesstimating 70 to 80. Anything you want to say to that?
I think if the ranges fall where I think they will, I think you're probably on point. So, and again, I'm hoping for better. And I
Me
think
too.
that depending if all the headlines the politicians have been making, work out just on a regulatory point of view, there are a lot of people or really funds. There's a lot of funds that can't put Bitcoin on their balance sheet
Hmm.
until they get regulatory certainty. All bets are off once that happens on the direction Bitcoin goes. But we have to wait to see if that those promises are delivered first.
Yes. Well, hey, I'm going to leave it right there. This was absolutely informative. That's what I want. I never just want to have guests on and not let the people know what's going on with your company. And then I do wanted to ask the questions that everybody wants to know. Could you hold on 1 second? I had to pay a bill for 30 seconds here. Listen, good people. This video is brought to you, should I say, this episode is brought to you by Stock Up You, where you can learn about stocks and today, more importantly, crypto. The coupon code is EARN. That's what you want to put in at checkout. Mr. Zach Bradford, listen, I am so happy that we finally got back together with both of our busy schedules. I love having you on. You're one of our favorites. And anything you want to say in parting?
No, just we always love to get investor feedback. Please check out the website and reach out to our investor relations team if you have any questions. Thanks for having me on today. Really appreciate it.
Hey, this has been a pleasure as usual. Looking forward to doing this again. All right. All right, good people. That's it. If you enjoyed it, make sure you our emoji is coffee cup. We're drinking coffee. If you really enjoy Zach, put in the comments, Zach. His name is Zach Bradford. He's the CEO of CleanSpark. But put in Zach and let's get some hearts going. All right. And we're going to leave it right there. Live, love, laugh, and learn.